2.5 years ago, I had the privilege of being in your island in Fiji and spending about a week with a small group of people, Dean and a bunch of other guys and gals. We got to spend some time with you, and you had a prediction. You said winter is coming.
Yes, I did.
And Dean has told me that you have predicted many things over the last 4 decades in the economy and what's happening in the world and all these different crises. You're kind of on the front lines of access to the most brilliant people in the world. So you know what's happening before it happens. And you said to us, winter is coming. You probably knew this 2 years prior to that. And you said, you don't know when exactly, but it's coming soon. And then, 4 or 5 months later, it hit, and it hit hard for a lot of people. And it's still hitting hard, like you're talking about, over the last couple of years. And I don't think it's going to slow down anytime soon. It seems like there might be some hope, and then boom, another wave, and then another wave of something, whatever it is. What did you learn from researching in the new book with all these different experts on how we can really take back control of our mind, our health in new ways to support us when the winter continues to hit? Because it doesn't seem like it's going away anytime soon.
Well, you're hitting on a huge note. I'd love to plant the seed with everyone listening, and that is we're about halfway through winter.
Ugh.
But my hope is this is the year where that part starts to change. But we're still in winter, meaning so many people have been conditioned to be fearful. So many businesses have been shut down. Our children have been kept out of school for such a long period of time that there's after effects on that. And it's also, you want to be a student of history. Think of it this way for a second. When did mankind really become a dominant force on Earth? When they made one distinction. I've shared this with you when we were private. I think I told you there's 3 skills that you want to master if you want to have an extraordinary life, no matter what decade we're in. You've probably read Oxford and many other universities are doing these studies where they say half the jobs we have today will be gone by 2040, which sounds like a long time, but it's 18 years from now, and that'll go like this. And so my grandkids, my daughter, it's like, what I want to help them with. Well, the first skill you got to master to be great, you're the school of greatness, is the ability to recognize patterns. When humanity recognized the pattern of the seasons, the whole world changed. Because we went from hunter-gatherers trying to survive from place to place where we're exposed to everything, to wait a second, if we plant in the springtime, we protect in the summer, we reap in the fall, and then we hang on to some of that so we can live through the winter. That created communities for the first time, and then eventually cities and states and countries. So that changed the world. What'll change a person's life is when you realize there's also a set of seasons in your own life. And so think of it this way, 0 to 21 is springtime. Things are easy to grow in springtime. You don't have to do that much. Growing as a kid happens naturally. And some people live a protected childhood, some of us not so much. But overall, life is supporting you. It's sending you, teaching you, sharing with you. Now, when you get from 21 to 41 or 22 to 42, whatever range you want to talk about, some people get there at 16, some people get there at 25. You now are in the real world. And now you go test what you learned in your springtime. And it's a hot summer and you find out, holy shit, a relationship's different than I thought it was when I'm in an intimate relationship committed. It's not the thing I just envisioned so easily. Or I'm not as bulletproof as I thought I was. I'm not president of the United States already and a billionaire like I said I was going to be when I was 19. So you start to learn, test, figure out what's real. And it's an important stage of life. 42, 43 to 62, 63 is the power of your life. It's the reaping time. If you worked hard in the spring and the summer and you put yourself out there and you planted, it's a reaping time. It's a time when you really become a leader. Just everyone's different, some sooner or later, but it's a great stage to understand. And then if you're lucky, you go from 63 to 83 and maybe 83 to 103, or the oldest living human's 119. You have an extended final season of your life where you get to be the mentor, you get to share, you get to make a difference. And maybe towards the end of your life, people look out for you again after you looked out for everybody else. That's kind of the cycle of life. But then there's a third pattern, and that's the cycle of history. The most powerful people, by the way, have used not only pattern recognition, but the second skill, pattern utilization. They see a pattern and they use it. So you'd say, how did Jeff Bezos become the richest man in the world? And the answer is simple. He studied the growth in the internet at an early stage and saw how explosive it was. It was like nothing else he could see. And he just figured any product, books was the easy one to start with. But he got himself in, and then he started to learn the real secret. The convenience is what people value more than anything else. And when he honed in on that one distinction, he not only recognized the pattern, used the pattern. The people that are real masters create their own patterns, right? You play everybody else's music, and then eventually you get good enough you can create your own music, right? So the similar thing happens. And so what's occurred is, in humanity, is you go through, there's this seasons in nature, there's seasons in my life, and then there's seasons in history. So watch this. This is what gives me great optimism for everyone watching here. First of all, winter's not forever. No pandemic lives forever. No, war lives forever. Nothing. Everything changes and everything ends. And that means something new occurs. You may not like it, but that's how life is. And the good news about winter is it's always followed by springtime. Historically, some winters are long, some are short, but they're always followed by springtime. What follows the night? The daytime. What a cool way to set it up if you were God or the universe, right? So imagine for a second, all of your listeners or viewers, and you think about it too. What if you're born in 1910? Now you know the seasons of a person's life. So from 1910, the next 19, 20 years of your life, you're going to be absorbing what was happening. World War I ends. The world looks like it's a great place. New technology, cars, radio, and then what happens? An explosion of abundance, the roaring 20s. And so you're a kid, you're 14, 15 years old, and you're like, I can't wait to get a car to go. But what happened when that person hit the next stage of life, 19, 20, 21 years old? As they came of age, it's 1929. And suddenly, people are jumping out of buildings, total depression, dust bowl, nobody's got jobs. It looks horrific, and it was horrific. But did they get a break? No, when they turned 29, it's 1939. So think about it now, World War II breaks out. You and I don't remember, we weren't there, but anybody who was alive will tell you, it looked like the whole world was gonna end. Hitler was sweeping across Europe, bombing London. It literally looked like the world as we know it was over. And this group of people, like millennials, or Z generation, a lot of people make fun of, and they go there, whatever, wallflowers, I forget the terms they use. And then the millennials and Z generation argue about you're old because you parked in the middle versus the side. I mean, it's bullshit. The same bullshit was happening then. These people are called flappers. They were irresponsible. But here's history and one thought. Good times create weak people. Weak people create bad times. Bad times create strong people. Strong people create good times. That's the history of the world over and over and over again.
Yes.
And so what happened is that generation who was weak became strong because the environment demanded it. They became the heroes. And think about how different the 1930s and 40s were versus after the war, 45 through 50, up until Kennedy, 63. That 20-year period was what a lot of people thought was the greatest time in America. Now, certainly wasn't if you're African American, started to become better if you're a woman. But then think about after Kennedy died and Robert Kennedy is killed and Martin Luther King is killed. Think about the 60s and the 70s, how different they were than the 80s, 90s, 2000s. So we go through these seasons. I could show them to you 1,000 years of Roman history and you can see them. There's a book I highly recommend. Bill Clinton gave me this book called Generations when I was working with him 25 years ago, about a 700-page book. But the same authors, William Strauss and Neil Howe, wrote a smaller book, which might be more helpful, and it's called The Fourth Turning. I read it in 1997. And it shows you the seasons of history and how everybody enters that. Like everyone's gonna have winter. Some are gonna have it in their 20s, some are gonna have it in their 40s, some are gonna have it in their 60s or 80s, some are gonna have it when they're children. And then we all move through these seasons that are pretty much historic because the older person dies, everybody loses that lesson, and then we tend to, unfortunately, have to relearn some lessons again. So I want you to know that if it looks really horrible right now, if you follow those cycles, we're about halfway through winter. And winter usually starts with a financial winter, which was what I was referring to. I did not predict the pandemic, but there are pandemics, as there were 80 years ago, right? But in addition to that, there's always a great war. And it could be a cyber war, it could be a war with China, but there's no question we are not done with what we're gonna deal with. In fact, I'm reading right now, one of the ways I stay on the cutting edge is I'm constantly studying history. because, people say, it doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes, And this is a book that anybody who really wants to know where the world's going, it's Ray Dalio's newest book, The Changing World Order. I mean, it's incredible. It's 500 years of history. So my whole thing is leaders anticipate, losers react. If you can anticipate what's coming, you can really take advantage. If you wait till it hits you, you're in trouble. So I think we're in a time where it's gonna be a better year if you're willing to be better, right? Winter can be a beautiful time. As you've heard me say before, you can freeze to death, or you can ski and snowboard and have a great time with your family and build something. And so then when spring comes, you can really take advantage. But if you look at the world, the most successful businesses started in a winter. 68% of the Fortune 1000 were started in either a recession or a depression. I don't care if you're talking about Disney or Exxon in the depression or Pizza Hut or FedEx in a recession or Apple in a recession. So this is your time, but you have to get your head straight and you got to get your energy strong. And that's not easy when most people are shoved in their houses and isolated and heard nothing but fear. So you got to take back control.
Absolutely. One of the things in the sports arena that I learned growing up was if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready.
I love that.
And you've worked with, interviewed, you're friends with the top peak performers in the world and in all industries, you know them all. What are one or two practices besides the one you talked about with your morning routine from peak performers that you've studied or maybe you've implemented that keeps them prepared so they don't have to get ready, they stay ready?
Well, I think, unfortunately, the real things are simple. That's why nobody does them. So if you took Ray Dalio or Warren Buffett, I mean, they're readers. I'm a constant reader, but I don't just read anything. I read something that I think can give me an edge of understanding. Because, look at it, Lewis, you and I both know, most people, Jim Rohn used to say, my teacher used to say, most people major in minor things. They know more about some actress's personal life than they know about their own physical body or their vitality or their energy or their emotion or their business or their career. And so what matters? A few subjects, your body, because your energy matters. That energy is low. Everything I just said is worthless to you because you're just going to go, he's talking too fast and there's a lot going on and hopefully the future will be better. Because when you're low energy, you don't use your full intelligence or ability. And most of us have not moved so much because of the environment of COVID, where everybody was pretty much locked down, and unless you live like I did in Florida. The point of the matter is most people, that energy has been lower. So you need energy. You need emotion. If you don't know how to master your emotions start wars. Emotion creates peace. Emotion gets you laid. Emotion gets you children. Emotion is what can make that business work or fail. And most people don't know how to direct their own emotions. What's another lesson? You got to look at your own financial world. If you don't master it, it's going to create enormous stress. Your relationships are everything, as we've already said. Your business or your career, or hopefully it's your mission. And then there's the spiritual side of life. So you can take a half dozen areas and go, let me find who's genius in this area and let me go learn from them. Let me go read, let me listen to podcasts. Let me be conscious about feeding my brain things that are going to give me not only inspiration, but insight and skill and tools. And everyone I know who is not only successful, but is able to contribute back to society, it has a hunger to constantly improve at least one area of those 6 areas of their life. And the most happy are the ones that hit in multiple areas. And that's why, like one of the reasons I wrote Life Force, richest man in the graveyard is not your goal. It's like there's an old phrase that says, a person who's healthy has 1,000,000 dreams. A person who's not healthy has one, So I wanted to give people the cutting edge in that area because it's such a critical area.
That belonging is being a part of something bigger than yourself, but it's also the courage to stand alone and to belong to yourself above all else. And so I think I spend a lot of time belonging to myself